You've probably wondered at some point why emotional intimacy feels so different depending on whether you're a man or a woman. Maybe you've been in a relationship where you thought you were opening up, only to be told you weren't giving enough. Or maybe you've poured your heart out and still felt like your partner didn't fully connect with you the way you hoped. Emotional intimacy is supposed to feel like closeness, like trust, like the kind of bond that makes you certain you're not alone. And yet, for so many couples, it becomes the very thing that creates distance. If you've ever asked yourself, why does my partner not connect with me the way I need? Or why do I feel like we're speaking two different languages when it comes to emotions? Then you're not alone. The truth is, men and women are often looking for emotional intimacy in completely different ways. And when you don't understand those differences, you'll always feel like something is missing. But when you do, you unlock the key to creating the kind of connection that feels unshakable. For you, the frustration comes from giving so much of yourself, but still not feeling met. You might sit there wondering why your partner can't open up the way you do, why he seems fine with just sharing space, without ever putting feelings into words. You might feel hurt when your vulnerability isn't matched by his, when it feels like you're always the one reaching for closeness while he stays a step away. And if you're on the other side, you might be the one who feels overwhelmed by constant questions, by pressure to reveal what you haven't even fully worked out inside yourself yet. You might crave emotional intimacy just as much, but in a way that doesn't look the same. For you, intimacy might mean knowing that your presence is enough, that being accepted without the demand for constant expression is love. This difference isn't about one side being right and the other wrong. It's about how deeply men and women are conditioned to approach connection, and how often those approaches clash until one person feels neglected and the other feels misunderstood. Think about how you define closeness. If you're someone who equates intimacy with sharing every thought, every fear, every detail of your day, then silence feels like distance. But if you're someone who sees intimacy in the comfort of quiet companionship, then being pushed to constantly verbalize feels like pressure, not love. Imagine sitting next to the person you love. For one of you, what makes that moment intimate is the conversation that flows, the openness, the reassurance that nothing is hidden. For the other, what makes it intimate is that you don't need to fill the silence, that just being side by side, without pretense, is the most honest expression of love there is. And this is where the tension begins, because both of you are right, and yet both of you can feel wronged if you don't recognize the other person's definition. What no one tells you is that men and women aren't naturally opposites, that they are often raised in ways that make them prioritize intimacy differently. You might have grown up being encouraged to share your emotions, to talk them through, to find connection in words. Or you might have grown up being taught to keep things to yourself, to process silently, to prove your strength through action instead of conversation. By the time you bring those habits into a relationship, they feel like your truth. And that's why, when your partner doesn't mirror them, you don't just feel misunderstood, you feel unloved. You might even start to believe something is broken between you, when in reality, nothing is broken at all. It's just that the way you each see emotional intimacy hasn't been named, and so it feels like a gap instead of what it really is. Two different doors leading to the same room. The hardest part for you might be realizing that your partner does want intimacy, just not always in the way you expect. If you're waiting for him to open up with words the way you do, you'll miss the intimacy in the way he sits close to you without distraction, in the way he fixes something around the house because he knows it'll make your life easier, in the way he pulls you close in the middle of the night without saying a word. If you're waiting for her to recognize that your quiet presence is enough, you'll miss the intimacy in the way she shares her thoughts, in the way she wants to process everything with you, because it means she trusts you, in the way she asks you questions, not to interrogate you, but to feel connected. The problem isn't that one of you loves more, it's that you've been taught to measure love in different currency. And unless you learn to exchange them, you'll always feel like you're paying into a relationship that never fully gives back. Right now, you might be remembering a moment where this showed up in your own life. A time when you thought you were giving everything, and yet your partner still looked at you like they were waiting for more. Or a time when you felt pressured to open up, when what you really needed was just space and acceptance. Those moments can leave you questioning whether you're enough or whether your partner will ever truly understand you. And yet the truth is that both of you already hold the answer. It just requires seeing intimacy through each other's eyes. Imagine how different your connection would feel if you understood that when he goes quiet, it doesn't always mean he's shutting you out. It might mean he's processing in the way that feels safest to him. Imagine how different it would feel if you understood that when she wants to talk about her feelings, it's not because she thinks you're failing, but because she sees sharing with you as the highest form of closeness. Suddenly, what once felt like conflict begins to look like love expressed in two languages that simply need translation. This is where you start to realize that intimacy isn't about sameness, it's about recognition. It's not about getting your partner to connect to the way you do. It's about learning how they connect and allowing that to be just as valid. Because if you can expand your definition of intimacy, you stop feeling deprived. You start noticing the love that's already there, hidden in gestures you might have dismissed before. And in return, when you begin to show intimacy in ways your partner understands, they stop feeling pressured and start feeling appreciated. This shift doesn't just solve arguments, it transforms the foundation of your relationship. It makes you both feel like you belong. Like you're finally seen, not for how you're supposed to love, but for how you actually love. The more you sit with this realization, the more you start to notice just how many times intimacy has been hidden in plain sight, disguised as ordinary moments. You think about the times he drove you somewhere without asking, or the times she stayed up late listening even though she was exhausted, or the times one of you reached for the other's hand without a word. None of those things looked like the dramatic gestures you see in movies. None of them sounded like the endless conversations you think you're supposed to have. And yet they were all expressions of love. You begin to wonder how much you might have missed simply because you were measuring intimacy by your own standards, instead of noticing the quiet ways it was already present. And that's the danger. Because when you only look for love in one form, you blind yourself to the ways it's already being offered to you every day. If you've ever found yourself saying, "He doesn't open speaking is not overthinking, it's connection. It's the way she confirms that she belongs, that her feelings are safe with you, that she doesn't have to carry her heart alone. For her, the words aren't noise, they're a bridge. The real challenge for you is that intimacy often demands you step outside your comfort zone. It asks you to love in a way that feels unfamiliar, maybe even uncomfortable at first. If your instinct is to keep your emotions locked inside, it may feel unnatural to put them into words. If your instinct is to constantly speak your feelings, it may feel unnatural to sit in silence and accept presence as enough. But that's the very point. Intimacy grows not when you keep repeating what feels easy, but when you stretch yourself to meet your partner where they are. It's in the moment you choose to say something even when you'd rather stay quiet, or the moment you choose to sit with them in stillness even when you'd rather ask questions, that intimacy deepens. Because it's no longer about what makes you feel safe, it's about what makes the other person feel loved. And when both of you do that for each other, the bond becomes unbreakable. Think about how often conflict in your relationship has started because of this gap. You bring up something that matters to you, but instead of responding, your partner withdraws. To you, it feels like rejection, like they don't care. To them, it feels like survival, like they need to retreat in order to process. Or maybe the roles are reversed, you need space, but your partner keeps pressing for answers, and instead of seeing it as love, you experience it as pressure. What starts as two people trying to connect turns into two people pulling further apart. Both hurt, both misunderstood. And the irony is that in those moments, you both want the same thing: closeness. You just don't know how to speak the other person's language. Imagine what it would feel like if instead of reacting with frustration, you paused and remembered this difference. If when he grew quiet, you said to yourself, This is his way of holding space, not his way of leaving me. If when she leaned in with more questions, you thought this is her way of reaching for me, not her way of overwhelming me, that simple shift doesn't erase the discomfort, but it transforms how you interpret it. And so instead of seeing distance, you begin to see love, even when it comes in a form you wouldn't choose for yourself. That is the essence of emotional intimacy, not waiting until your partner loves the way you do, but recognizing love in the way they already are. There's something powerful that happens when you stop demanding that intimacy look one way and start opening yourself to the many ways it can be expressed. You begin to feel safer because you're no longer constantly questioning whether you're enough or whether your partner is holding back. You start to see evidence of love everywhere, not just in the words but in the gestures, not just in the grand expressions but in the smallest act. You notice the way he puts his phone down when you enter the room, the way she remembers the details you thought she forgot, the way he worries about your safety when you're out late, the way she notices when you're off and doesn't let it go. All of these moments are intimacy. All of them are ways of saying, I see you, you matter to me. And when you allow yourself to truly see them, you realize you're far more connected than you thought. Of course, there are times when this difference still feels heavy, times when you crave more words or when you need more space, and it feels like your partner can't give it. That's when communication becomes vital. Not the kind where you argue or blame, but the kind where you gently reveal what makes you feel loved, without attacking what makes them feel safe. It might sound like when you go quiet, I sometimes feel like I've done something wrong. Could you reassure me even with something small, so I know you're still here with me? Or it might sound like, even when that looks different than what you expect, you begin to understand that intimacy isn't about erasing difference. It's about embracing it. The beauty of connection lies in contrast. If both of you expressed love in the exact same way, you might never learn to expand, to grow, to see love in forms you'd never considered before. The differences push you, they stretch you, they invite you to love more deeply than you would on your own. And when you choose to see them not as obstacles but as opportunities, your relationship shifts from a battlefield of unmet needs to a partnership where both of you are learning, both of you are giving, both of you are growing together. The more you practice this, the more you realize intimacy doesn't have to be dramatic or complicated. It can be found in the smallest, quietest details of your everyday life. It's in the coffee he makes you in the morning without asking. It's in the way she texts you just to know you're safe. It's in the long drives where no words are spoken but your hands are intertwined. It's in the hard conversations where you push past the discomfort to tell the truth. All of these moments add up, layer by layer, until you realize that intimacy is not built in grand gestures, but in the daily choice to notice, to value, and to honor each other's ways of loving. And when you truly see it, you understand that the love you've been searching for has been there all along, just waiting for you to recognize it. The longer you reflect on these truths, the more you realize that emotional intimacy isn't just about understanding your partner, it's also about understanding yourself. Because sometimes the reason you struggle to connect is not only because you speak different emotional languages, but because you've never fully defined what intimacy means to you in the first place. Maybe you've been reaching for closeness out of fear, afraid that if you don't constantly check in, you'll be abandoned. Or maybe you've been avoiding vulnerability because you learned long ago that owning up left you exposed and unprotected. Whatever your history, you carry it into your relationships. and it shapes how you give and receive love. And until you bring that awareness into the open, you'll keep confusing old wounds with present dynamic. This is where you start to see that intimacy doesn't just live between two people, it begins inside you. The way you handle your emotions, the way you soothe yourself, the way you allow yourself to be vulnerable or guarded, all of it sets the stage for how you connect. If you expect your partner to heal the places inside you that you haven't faced, intimacy will always feel fragile, because you'll depend on them to fix what only you can confront. But when you begin to take responsibility for your own inner world, something shifts. You no longer approach your partner with desperation, but with clarity. You no longer confuse their silence with rejection or their questions with judgment, because you've already done the work to know your worth. Suddenly, intimacy stops feeling like a test of whether they love you enough and starts feeling like a gift you both get to exchange without fear of losing yourselves. You might remember moments when your partner's actions triggered something deep in you. Maybe when he shut down, it echoed the way someone in your past withdrew, leaving you feeling abandoned all over again. Maybe when she pressed for more words, it reminded you of a time when you felt cornered, pressured to reveal what you weren't ready to share. In those moments, you weren't only reacting to your partner, you were reacting to intimacy is not about leaning on each other in a way that makes you dependent. It's about standing strong in yourself and choosing every day to share that strength with someone else. At the heart of intimacy lies vulnerability, and vulnerability is terrifying because it carries risk. To show your emotions is to risk being misunderstood. To admit your fears is to risk being judged. To ask for what you need is to risk being denied. But without that risk, there can be no intimacy, only surface-level interaction. You cannot truly be known if you never allow yourself to be seen. And this is why so many relationships feel hollow, not because there is no love, but because there is no courage to be real. You might protect yourself by staying quiet, or by pretending everything is fine, or by deflecting with humor, but every time you do, you build another wall. And behind that wall, closeness dies. So the real question becomes, are you willing to risk being seen? Are you willing to sit across from the person you love and say, this is what scares me, this is what I crave, this is what hurts, this is what I need? Not in a way that blames, not in a way that accuses, but in a way that reveals who you are without armor. That kind of honesty may feel unbearable in the moment, but it's the only path to intimacy that lasts, because only when your partner knows the real you, the unfiltered, imperfect, human you, can they truly choose to love you. And only when you allow yourself to be chosen in that state, can you ever believe that the love is real. Think of the times when you've been brave enough to do this, even in small ways. The time you admitted that you were afraid of losing them. The time you confessed that you felt insecure about something you'd never said aloud. The time you allowed yourself to cry in front of them instead of hiding it. Those moments might have scared you, but they were also the moments when you felt most alive, most connected. Because in those moments, you weren't playing a role, you weren't protecting an image, you were simply you. And when your partner stayed, when they reached for you in your rawness, that was intimacy in its purest form. That was love proving itself not in perfection, but in presence. And yet vulnerability isn't only about exposing your weaknesses. It's also about sharing your joy, your excitement, your deepest dreams. Sometimes you hold those back too, afraid that if you shine too brightly, it will be dismissed or misunderstood. But intimacy grows not only in shared pain, but in shared hope. When you let your partner see what lights you up, what you long for, what makes you come alive, you invite them into the most sacred parts of your heart. And when they share the same with you, you become more than partners. You become witnesses to each other's becoming. That's the kind of intimacy that makes relationships feel like home. What you begin to understand is that intimacy is not one grand act, but a series of small choices. Choices to notice, to risk, to reveal, to accept. Every time you choose to listen instead of defend, every time you choose to reveal instead of hide, every time you choose to interpret with love instead of suspicion, you build a bond that nothing can easily break. And while men and women may have been taught to approach these choices differently, the foundation is the same: the desire to be known and the courage to allow it. When you recognize this shared longing beneath the surface differences, compassion replaces frustration. Instead of seeing your partner as resistant, you see them as scared. Instead of seeing them as demanding, you see them as longing, and that shift changes everything. Because at the end of the day, both of you want the same thing: to feel safe, to feel loved, to feel that you matter. You may reach for it in different ways, but the destination is the same. And when you can remember that, when you can hold on to the truth that every silence and every word, every withdrawal and every pursuit is rooted in the same longing, then your relationship becomes less about who's right and more about how you can meet each other in the middle. That middle ground is where true intimacy lives. Not in extremes, not in one person's way dominating the other, but in the shared willingness to bridge the gap. And when you stand in that space together, you no longer feel like you're fighting against each other. You feel like you're fighting for each other. The more this truth settles into you, the more you begin to see how intimacy is not about choosing sides, not about proving who is right or wrong, but about learning to dance with differences until they no longer feel like barriers but like rhythm. You realize that every relationship has this invisible line where misunderstandings could either tear you apart or teach you how to love better. And the only thing that determines which way it goes is your willingness to see through your partner's eyes. It's the moment you stop demanding that intimacy look the same and start appreciating the different ways it shows up. The tension softens. You stop keeping score of who gives more, because you finally see that both of you have been giving all along, just in ways you didn't always recognize. And this realization is liberating because it frees you from the endless cycle of disappointment. Instead of waiting for love to appear in a single form, you begin to collect it from everywhere. A hand on your back becomes proof of care. A quiet evening becomes a gesture of trust. A vulnerable conversation becomes evidence of devotion. The contrast stops frustrating you and starts enriching you, because you no longer measure intimacy in a single language. You're bilingual now, fluent in your own way of loving and in your partner's. This doesn't just deepen your connection, it expands your capacity to love beyond anything you thought possible. But what might surprise you most is how this shift affects not only your relationship, but the way you move through the world. When you begin to practice intimacy in this way, you develop a softer lens for everyone. You see that your parents, your friends, your colleagues, all of them express closeness in different forms too. Some through action, some through words, some through presence. Suddenly you find yourself less quick to judge, less quick to feel unloved, because you know that love wears many disguises. This makes you more patient, more compassionate, more attuned. Intimacy, once something you chased desperately or resented for being out of reach, becomes something you carry inside you, a steady knowing that you are capable of building closeness anywhere you choose to nurture it. And this is where the transformation becomes undeniable. Because what once felt like conflict now feels like opportunity. What once made you pull away now makes you lean in. You stop fearing the differences between men and women, between you and your partner, because you finally see them for what they are, invitations to love more complete. Where you once saw silence as rejection, you now see it as safety. Where you once saw constant words as pressure, you now see them as longing. The same actions that once drove you apart now draw you closer, because you've learned to see the love inside them. That doesn't mean everything suddenly becomes easy. There will still be days when you want more than your partner can give in that moment, or when you retreat in ways that confuse them. But now, instead of spiraling into blame or fear, you approach it with curiosity. You ask, you listen, you interpret with love instead of suspicion. And that makes all the difference, because intimacy is not about perfection, it's about repair. It's about the courage to come back to each other again and again, to bridge the gap, not once, but every time it appears. And every time you do, the bond grows stronger. You start to realize that intimacy is not a destination, but a practice. It is not something you achieve once and then keep forever. It is something you choose daily. It's in the way you show up, the way you notice, the way you soften your heart even when it would be easier to harden it. And when both of you commit to that practice, even imperfectly, you for who you are. The only difference lies in how that desire is expressed. For one, it may be in words. For the other, in silence. For one, in closeness through conversation. For the other, in closeness through presence. For one, in reaching out. For the other, in staying near. And when you stop judging those differences as failures, you begin to see that they're not opposites at all. They're complement together. They form a whole. Imagine what it feels like to live inside that kind of connection. To know that you don't have to beg for love because you can finally see it in the ways it's already given. To know that your partner doesn't have to be anyone other than who they are for you to feel cherished. To know that your own way of loving is not wrong, not too much, not too little, but simply part of the mosaic that makes your bond unique. That's the intimacy you've been searching for all along. Not the fantasy of perfect alignment, but the reality of imperfect people choosing to meet each other halfway. And the beauty is that this intimacy is not rare. It's not reserved for the lucky few who magically find someone who thinks exactly like them. It is available to anyone willing to practice it. It's available to you. The moment you decide to listen with curiosity instead of judgment, the moment you decide to reveal instead of hide, the moment you decide to interpret with love instead of suspicion, you step into intimacy. Not tomorrow, not someday, but right now. Because intimacy is not built in grand declarations, it's built in choices like these, repeated over and over, until they become the language you both speak fluently. This is what emotional intimacy really looks like when you stop separating men from women and start seeing the humanity underneath. It looks like two people, different yet the same, learning to understand each other's rhythms. It looks like patience in silence and courage in speech. It looks like giving space without fear and giving words without judgment. It looks like two imperfect souls deciding every day to make each other feel less alone in a world that can be overwhelming. That is intimacy. That is love. And when you allow yourself to live inside that truth, you realize that the connection you've been craving is not only possible, it's already here waiting for you to see it.